Apple App Store review hiccup. That's the theme for this week. Hello, you're watching the development vlog for Shorten, a restaurant waitlist management tool that is currently available on Google Play Store and soon to be made available on iOS App Store. This is Bill from Shorten, and this is week 65 of development. The current progress, as you just heard, is that the Google Play Store has approved my production access 2 weeks ago, so the app has been published. I take Google App Store a little more time to index the app, and I actually still haven't done any App Store optimization, so the screenshots and the verbiage are fairly rudimentary. I plan on improving those in the next couple of weeks. That said, the app is ready and available for download and production use, so that part is good. The iOS part, the Apple iOS App Store, I ran into a hiccup last week. I submitted my application for production access last week on iOS App Store. Took them 3 to 4 days to mark my app from waiting for review to in review. And within a couple of hours after the app changed from in review, I received my rejection. To be clear, I was expecting a rejection. Typically, from my understanding, unless you have an entire team that does the store readiness review before you actually submit your app to the store, you're going to get rejected. You're going to miss certain things, or the App Store might require you to explain certain things that you didn't have an opportunity to explain before your first submission. So I was expecting that. That said, though, what is interesting is that with Google, I think it took them 3 or 4 days in total, and then my access to production was granted immediately after that. So I received no rejection. To be clear, I was being very fastidious about my submission, so I made sure as much as possible that the submission was compliant and everything was, there in place. So Google was fairly easy. Now, Apple gave me the first issue. They gave me 2 issues specifically, and I'm reading right now. The first one seems to be fairly benign, and the first one, they said it's Guideline 2.1 Section B, information needed. More specifically, they're looking to understand the business model of this app. Who am I selling this app to? Who is likely going to pay for the subscription? And would my subscription, the pro service, be available for purchase on other platforms? It confused me a little bit. Number one, do they really need to understand how this app makes money? Why does it concern them? Because I'm not trying to make a legal, make a product that does illegal businesses and stuff. It should be fairly straightforward. This is a waitlist management tool. It's really not for anything else. So that's my sort of a small amount of confusion. The bigger confusion, though, came from their questioning. The language specifically they used was, where can users purchase the services that can be accessed in the app? So if I'm reading that correctly, they're trying to figure out whether or not I'm trying to sell the pro access to this app, the paid subscription, outside of in-app purchase. The confusion that I have is that I understand the rules for using iOS App Store, which is if I plan to sell anything that's within this app for money, I have to make the sales available through in-app purchase on Apple iOS Store. So in other words, they can get their cut, right? Their cut is 15% for small businesses and 30% for large businesses. Just a side note, I don't think that's too outrageous. 15 is really, if you think about Steam takes a much bigger cut than that. And iOS App Store lets you access a big part of the consumer base. So I'm okay with that. Even if I'm not, to be honest, even if I'm not okay with that, I have no choice. I have to accept it, right? So I understand that part. What I don't understand is, as far as I know, you don't have to limit your purchase options to Apple App Store if your app is also accessible on other platforms. So for instance, this is a multi-platform app. In other words, my Google Play Store, somebody can use an Android device, log in there, and then make the purchase on Android, and come back to iOS and continue to use it. Now, in that case, Apple doesn't get the cut because that user paid on Google Play Store, and so Google gets the cut. But my understanding is that that's okay. And if you think about it, they can't not make this okay. Not only would it run afoul with places like the European Union, but more like practically speaking, you're just like your consumers are going to get so confused, like fragmented platforms and stuff. I guess you could do that, like PlayStation, Xbox, they're sort of fragmented platforms and stuff like that. But like with iOS, I don't think this is a concern. And you can even go onto your personal website and bypass all of those um, app stores and then purchase allow your users to purchase a subscription directly on your website. So you only need to pay Stripe fees as opposed to, the heavy-handed cuts that those stores take. So given that, I'm just confused why they're asking me, where can users purchase the services that can't be accessed in the app? Like, how does that inform them in terms of what they need to do with my app? If I told them they can access it everywhere, Google Play Store, online, in Apple iOS App Store, they'll go, okay, sure, no problem. If I told them they can only access in Apple iOS App Store, like they're not going to do anything differently depending on the response I give them if I'm already abiding by the rules, which is at least making it available in Apple iOS App Store, right? So that's the confusion. But it is what it is. So I came up with my response and I submitted my response to satisfy their questions. Maybe they're just doing due diligence and there's no other reason outside of that. So this is problem number one, the information needed problem. The second one is a bit more involved. The second one, they called it Guideline 5.1.2 Section I, Legal, Privacy, Data Use and Sharing. So just so we're on the same page, they didn't discover any privacy violations in the app, right? I'm not trying to sell the data to people. I'm nowhere near big enough for my data to be valuable for somebody to be even interested in this. That's number one. Number two, that's the sort of the back end. Like if you're trying to sell data, like your data would live on your server, right? And that's your back end situation. And that's actually exactly what this particular section is trying to address. So if you've ever used an iOS app since one or two major OS revisions ago, iOS 16 or 17, they started doing this app tracking transparency, or ATT, where a user opens your app, and if this is the first time that they're using your app, they'll be presented with the question, the app maker tracks your usage for marketing purposes. Do you want them to track, or do you want to ask them not to track? And you're presented with that option. So this is the ATT part of it. Now, for that dialog to show up, you need to implement that in the app, right? The operating system doesn't take care of it for you. You have to implement that in your app as you start up the app, and then the user should be presented with the option of deciding whether or not they want to. Great idea. I'm not sure if the execution makes a lot of sense. So I found a couple of issues. Number one, I'm hit with this question, right? Legal, privacy, data use, and sharing, because in my self-attestation of what the app tracks and how I'm planning on using this information, just a side note, by the way, when you're submitting this app or any app, they ask you to provide a detailed inventory of all the information that you gather from the user. Like, do you gather the user's email address, their name, their age, their gender, their sex, their home address, their phone number, stuff like that? Any app activity, like for instance, if they clicked this instead of that, do you track that information? Do you track their GPS information? All of that information they ask you to inventory in detail. And with each and every single one of them, you're supposed to identify what you use that information for. Okay, so for instance, in my app, when people put in their phone number, I'm only using that for my app functionality, right? A guest comes to your restaurant, you put in their phone number so that when their seating becomes available, you text them. That's what my app does. That's app functionality. So you gotta tell it to them. You can't say, oh, like if you're planning on using this phone number and start advertising to those people who've provided you with their legitimate phone numbers, then you need to disclose that. So with each and every single piece of this information, you need to tell them how you intend to use it. Now, What I did in my first submission is that I put in what I aspire for each piece of information to do. So for instance, the email address, right? I use that to identify my users. How else do you do that, right? I required people to sign in, and the way that they sign in is attached to their email address. So in addition to that, I was thinking, maybe down the line, if I have a new feature that gets added to the app, I want them to know about this. I want to send them marketing emails. I mean, these emails could be informational, but just to be safe, it's easier for you to it's much better for you to classify them as marketing emails than informational emails. So you would send those marketing emails to the same email, your users who you identify with the email addresses. In that case, it's for a marketing purpose. And if you have any field that you track for marketing purposes right now, you're supposed to implement app tracking transparency, which is that little dialog box that you see on iOS devices whenever you open up a new app. Now, I did not implement ATT because that's one additional thing that I have to work on. And why do that now when I don't need it? But because I declared that I am using email addresses for future marketing purposes, they're like, no, you can't do that. You have to then implement app tracking transparency. And after doing some digging and reading into their legal and compliance language, I realized I don't have to do that. This app currently doesn't do any marketing tracking, right? I'm gathering information of my users only for app functionality. I'd love to be able to market more and use the targeted information more, but I'm not there. I'm nowhere close to that yet. I need to, at this stage, I'm number one, trying to get users, number two, gain their trust that this app is something that would solve their problems, demonstrate my value. And after that point, hopefully at some point, I can scale to more sort of larger scale marketing effort. Now, no way. So what I did was to rectify the situation was I went in and I declared true to the current state of the app, what I use in terms of the information and what I track in terms of for marketing purposes, which is none at this moment. And I resubmitted my application to production access to them, and we'll see if it would solve the problems that they're seeing. Now, so that's the two problems that I've run into with the App Store submission. One thing I did learn is that they don't upfront tell you all the problems that they've run into. It's sort of like a first loss or first stop situation. As soon as they find something that they can't approve the app for, they send you a notification and tell you to rectify that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't find new issues down the line after you've gone through the first hurdle before you can publish your app. So I hope I don't have other problems with the app, but I have a feeling that I might be receiving or expecting another rejection that I have to address at some point next week or so. But, it is what it is, right? So to summarize, last week, the Apple App Store production access was submitted and then rejected. They presented with two problems that are subsequently rectified with a response. And the app is now back in Apple's court for review. Hopefully that will be that, but who knows? The other thing that I did last week was, I was like, I'm in a bad mood. Apple wants me to do all this paperwork stuff, and let's do something fun. So I am in the middle of implementing the next feature in the app, which is allowing restaurant hosts, to put in menus such that when your guests are waiting to be seated, other than scrolling TikTok, they can look forward to and anticipate the things that they can do at your restaurant, which is ordering delicious meals, so that they can look at the menu on the same page, hopefully with updated pricing information, availability information. The value proposition I have for this is, if you are a busy restaurant, if your restaurant is so busy during peak hours that you would need my app for this purpose, your biggest problem is not whether or not you can get customers. You're way past that. Your biggest problem is turn your tables as fast as possible, right? You only have 2 to 3 hours during the evening, the golden peak hours, and you want to churn as many people through that as possible without them, of course, feeling hurried. How do you do that? You get those people to reduce the period of time it takes, but after they're seated, but before they order. And how do you do that? You get them to view your menu, to plan in their heads ahead of time before they're seated what they want. They're hungry. Their interest is aligned with yours. They want to eat as fast as you can serve them. And we're here to fill that gap. And I think that's really exciting. A lot of times, I don't know about you. A lot of times when I go to the restaurant, I'm really hungry. I want to eat. And then, oh, there's a long line, 1 hour long line. But it's worth it. The food is delicious. I want to wait in line for that. And then, you're seated. Oh, finally, I'm seated. And then the waiter or the waitress just like goes out of the way, and it was like they're thinking that you're looking at the menu and you might need a few minutes. No, I had already done my research. I had gone through your menu. I know exactly what I wanted. I even emailed myself with a list of things that I wanted to order from you, because as soon as I sit down, I want to put in my order. This app, the functionality I implemented last week, aims to fill the gap. Your customers can look at your menu and plan ahead of time in their head what they want to order. And as soon as they sit down, they are presented with the opportunity of ordering. And then you can churn those tables faster. Now, not every single customer will do this, of course, right? Some of them, a lot of them, would prefer to be pampered. They enjoy this kind of taking their time, looking at the menu experience. You're going to run into diners like that. That's just what it is. I like tea. I don't like coffee. A lot of people swear by coffee, which I won't comment here. But at least this app is going to allow that subset of the customers that you have to order more quickly, enjoy the meal more quickly, raise their satisfaction level so that they're not just sitting down waiting for waiters and waitresses to come by again to take their orders, and then turn your tables faster that way. So I think this is really exciting. And I think I can get this feature in probably next week. And after that, I'll probably be looking at a fresh round of tests, because this is a major feature addition to the app. In any case, this is a very long soliloquy, and thank you very much for your patience. And that's it for this week. I will see you next week.